Hello, everybody. You are listening to another episode of the podcast Rise and Tell with Sheekha. Today, I have a wonderful guest. I've learned tons after this episode, and I'm pretty sure you are going to learn a lot, especially when it comes to public speaking and communication. Our guest for today is Danny Brassell. He's a highly sought after speaker, trainer, and a coach. Would you believe that he's actually spoken to over 3,500 audiences worldwide? He's also an author of 19 books, including Leadership Begins with Motivation and Misfits and Crackpots. He's the co-founder of the Well-Crafted Story Workshop, and Danny helps businessmen, individuals, and organizations leverage speaking on stages as a major client lead source that converts. Every question that I asked him, Danny gave me an example. And that just sat right with me. And I'm pretty sure I'm not going to forget those for the rest of my life. And I'm going to implement one starting today. Stick to the end to know what it was. I hope you enjoy this episode. Let's get started. So there you go, everybody. Today we have with us Danny Brassell. Welcome to our show, Danny. How are you?
Fantastic. Thanks so much for having me today, Sheekha. More importantly, thanks for all the joy you're spreading around the world. We need a lot more of you.
Of course. Thank you so much. Oh, that made me feel so nice. And I think that's exactly what you do, what you teach people to start building relationships the minute you start talking. So let's just get right into it. You've authored a lot of books and you've spoken to so many different types of audiences. And you talk about building a rapport and first impressions. So my question, especially in the remote world, we are sitting, we're on a screen, we haven't met face to face, but what are some of the few things that people can do to make a great first impression?
Well, you'll have to bear with me today, Sheekha, because I used to be a former school teacher. So everything I do either rhymes or it's alliterative. And so I co-founded a company called Well-Crafted Story Workshop with my two partners, Coach Jimmy Hayes Nelson and Dave Ward. I call us the professor, the performer, and the producer because my background is in academia. Coach Jimmy was an actor on Broadway, and Dave was an attorney and an AI specialist in Silicon Valley. And so what we teach our clients to do is to go through what we call our 5 C's process, which are clarity, connect, content, call to action, and close. And so to address your question, the power of connection, there's no doubt that the opening of any presentation, whether you're delivering a keynote to a ballroom or an elevator pitch to a single individual, those first 30 seconds to 5 minutes count. And so I always say you got to rap. And so RAP stands for you have to show that you're relatable, you have to demonstrate your authority, and you have to illustrate to the audience your purpose. And so relatable means, hey, I'm just like you. I've had the problem that you've had. Authority, and I solve that problem. Purpose. And now I'm on a mission to help people just like you solve that problem so they don't have to suffer as I suffered. If you can do that, you're going to be much more relatable. I always tell people, stop sharing your successes and start sharing your failures because not everybody in your audience has succeeded, but they've all failed. And the more you reveal your own failures and vulnerabilities, the more your audience is going to see themselves in you. And that's really the most powerful part of any presentation is how do you connect with people so that they're curious to know more about you?
Wow, interesting. And that's on point. Even as an audience now, like I'm listening to it, I'm like, yeah, I would love it if someone would be able to relate to me, especially a speaker who's standing and talking in front of thousands of people. Yes, that's interesting. But Danny, what about leaders? I know you've also coached a lot of leaders and people in different positions. Some of the leaders, again, not all, but some of them do not like to be vulnerable when it comes to their problems, issues, or with their, and just anything with their peers. They feel, I don't know, like it affects their authority or, the impact that they have would be decreased. But how can a leader use this to build great relationships and to be a great speaker too?
It's actually a big mistake for those types of leaders who want to portray that they're infallible. I mean, they actually have it wrong, and that people are going to respect you more when they see that you've actually had to endure challenges and obstacles throughout your own lifetime. I take the example of General Patton when he was delivering his motivational talk to his troops before the invasion of D-Day. He said something that I always loved. He said, a lot of people say you should die for your country. I say, let the other guy die for his country. You want to survive. Well, statements like that would get a smirk out of his troops that made them love him. And so one of the things that I think differentiates me from a lot of these coaches is a lot of people say, reveal your darkest moments. And so I understand that a lot of leaders, they don't want to talk about their most traumatic moments. I don't want to talk about my most traumatic moments. But I do think that by infusing humor, you can actually get people to grin and say, oh, this is a person just like me. I mean, a lot of the speaking coaches I see, they'll talk about those dark moments, and there's three reasons why I resist that. First of all, the world just survived a global pandemic, Sheekha. I mean, everybody's had a lot of bad things happen to them. I don't think we need more stories of sorrow and pain. I think we need more stories of hope. Second of all, what Coach Jimmy and I train our clients to do is to create what we call a well-crafted story. Superhero movies would call it your origin story. Politicians call it a stump speech. You can call it peanut butter and jelly. What this is a presentation that you're going to rehearse and deliver again and again to introduce yourself to new audiences. And again, it's going to be flexible enough that it can be an hour long or 30 seconds long. It can be delivered one to many or one to few or one to one. This is how you're going to introduce yourself. So do you really want to keep on repeating that same traumatic experience again and again? I mean,
right.
I have a friend, his daughter was killed in a school shooting. He's delivered that presentation over 1,000 times. I mean, you have to be a lot stronger than me to talk about the worst moment of your life and relive that again and again. Actually, I was working with a client once, and he's had a lot of bad things happen to him, and he doesn't talk about any of them. And I said, why don't you talk about that? And he said, those things happen to me. They don't define me. I was like, oh, that was a little bit of wisdom there. But the third thing, which I think differentiates me, and this is where a lot of people get angry with me, I have one objective when I'm on stage. I want you to leave feeling better when you came in. I want you laughing, smiling, happy. I think there's something admirable about that as a goal. I believe that people that tell the same sad story again and again, by the 20th time they're telling that story, now those are crocodile tears, and now they're being manipulative. And I'm not saying it's not an effective sales strategy. I mean, it's actually a very effective sales strategy. But I personally don't want to have to take a shower after I get off stage because I just manipulated my audience. There are actually ethical ways to persuade people to want to get to know you better. And so that's why I resist that kind of talk. I understand the leaders that don't want to share any vulnerabilities. And I'm not saying you have to talk about the day your mother died of cancer. I am saying, though, you should talk about like how you got in a fender bender on the way to work today, or how you had, when you first started off, your boss yelled at you for some little infraction. People have to understand this. Every expert started as an amateur. And so it's important for you as a leader to demonstrate that, because most of the people you're talking to are starting at that lower level, aspiring to reach your level.
Correct. Perfect. Now it makes sense. When you put it that way, it definitely makes sense. I did a little bit of research about you, Danny, and you talk a lot about the reading and the speaking connection. And I'm an avid reader, or so I like to tell everybody, but you'll always see me with a book. How can you tie reading to being a good speaker?
Well, I've always said that there's plenty of readers that don't necessarily become effective leaders, but I can't name a single effective leader in history that's not also an avid reader. I mean, I read to, some people collect stamps, some people collect trading cards. I collect stories. I'm always looking for stories. And so here's a little ninja strategy for your audience. It's one of the first activities I do with clients is later on, I want you to sit in a comfortable chair with a pen and paper, libation of choice. And for an hour, I want you to write down every story that's ever happened in your life. And I don't mean the entire story. I just mean triggers, like the time I locked myself out of the car in front of Costco, the time dad spilt mustard on his tie at that fancy restaurant. You'll find in an hour, you can come up with literally hundreds of stories like this. So that's the first part of the exercise. The second part of the exercise is then I want you to think about, what's this story really about? Oh, this is a story about never giving up. Oh, this is a story about building trust and maintaining trust. Oh, this is a story of love. And so on my computer, I literally have hundreds of files with probably tens of thousands of stories like this. So I'm very intentional when I'm crafting my presentation to include stories that get my audience to move a certain way, because I'm always focused on what my call to action is. What do I want the audience to do next? Now, the reason I read voraciously is there's just gems there all the time. A lot of people don't know a lot of the cool stories out there. It's kind of like watching movies. When you hear something interesting in a movie or a scene, you just store that in your storage bank. I mean, every now and then I work with a difficult client that'll say, "Oh, I have no stories." Well, that's completely untrue. Everybody has stories, but let's say you have no story whatsoever. I love reading personal development books. And one of the most famous personal development books of all time is Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, in which he shares no personal stories whatsoever. What he did is he interviewed all these millionaires and shares their stories. That's the power of reading, is figuring out, oh, well, here's a story about Pierre Trudeau and how he was able to handle this fishing problem in northern Saskatchewan. And here's a story about Mahatma Gandhi when he was battling the British, how he was able to get the entire nation at a standstill by having everybody not work that day and just make salt. I'm always looking for stories that, but I'm very intentional about it too. The problem I see with a lot of presentations is people tell compelling stories, but they have nothing to do with what they want the audience to do. A really well-crafted story, there's a reason for everything. There's a reason you put this story here, because it's leading to an action you want the audience to take further down the line.
Awesome. All right. Personal question. Do you hate PowerPoint or do you love it for the slides?
So the answer is it depends. I use PowerPoints all the time. I love PowerPoints when they're used effectively. So I've never had a person ever, Sheekha, like 6 months after one of my presentations say, "Oh, you know what I loved about your talk, Danny, was that one PowerPoint slide that had 18 bullet points that you couldn't read because the font was so small." I've never had a person say that. But what Walt Disney said, people think in pictures. And so anybody out there trying to figure out, how do I create a more effective PowerPoint presentation? I want you to watch the nightly news. And when the anchor person is delivering the news, you're going to notice in the upper right-hand corner, there's a box. And in the box is a picture. So if they're talking about like a war, you'll see an explosion. And what they're doing is they're giving you a visual cue to remember that story. And that's what an effective PowerPoint should be doing. I mean, if you're going to use text, maybe like an inspirational quote or one very small fact. But here, I'll demonstrate this for you. I've done this with tens of thousands of people. I want you right now, Sheekha, to think of an apple. I'm going to give you 5 seconds to visualize an apple. Think of an apple. All right. Now tell me what you just thought of.
An apple, right?
Yeah. Describe it, what you thought of.
A red color fruit.
Yeah.
And maybe, yeah.
Yeah. So I have
maybe a little stalk and a leaf on it.
Great. So you thought of a red apple with a leaf. I mean, some people get more specific. They'll say, "Oh, I thought of a Fuji apple or a Granny Smith green apple." Some people get clever. They'll say, "Oh, I thought of an Apple computer," or "I thought of my Apple iPhone." I've done this so many times, and yet I have never once, not even once, Sheekha, had a person say, "Oh, you know what I thought of? APPLE." Nobody thinks of the spelling because we don't think. We think in pictures. And so your job as a storyteller on stage is to get your audience to picture whatever it is that you want them to picture. And the most gifted storytellers get an audience so they're all leaning in and they can see themselves in the stories that they're talking about.
Oh, wow. That was brilliant. What a lovely way of delivering a message. Amazing. I love it. I think I'm going to do that now going forward.
Great.
For every meeting that I have. That's awesome. Okay. When it comes to practical communication, Danny, I've noticed that a lot of people, especially coming from the IT industry, they're
Mhm.
brilliant.
Mhm.
They are very knowledgeable, technical knowledge, 10 out of 10. But
Yep.
the minute you put them on the spot and ask them to explain what they're doing or what they did, so many of them struggle to translate whatever they've worked on to just basic English sentences. And again, some of them I agree that the cultural background is different and what they grew up learning was different, language issues, accent issues, but even the basic communication skills, not the language, but just communicating is tough for such people. So, what would you suggest to such kind of brilliant people who struggle to explain what they do in simple terms?
So I have a policy, Sheikha. I take my job seriously. I don't take myself too seriously because I ain't all that, and neither are you. And if you think you're all that, kindergarten for a week, the little ones will set you straight. When I taught kindergarten, I had a little girl, LaShonda, raised her hand one day. I'm like, LaShonda, question. She's like, Miss Brassell, when are you going to trim your nose hair? I'm like, this afternoon. Thanks for bringing that to my attention, LaShonda. I ain't all that. I work, Coach Jimmy and I, we work with a lot of Silicon Valley companies with like engineering teams. And so let's just say engineers tend to be more introverted and they're not very good at explaining concepts, like you say, to a general audience. They're more inside. And so I have a habit. All of my clients that I work with, whether it's the person or the company, I always change the name because I believe in discretion. My business partner, Coach Jimmy, he names everybody we name, but I believe in discretion. So we were working with, I was working with this Indian engineer, and he's brilliant. He has an incredible presentation, but he had a very difficult time connecting with his audience. And he's like, Danny, please, you have to make me funny. Make it so the audience loves me. And so all we did is, he has a very difficult name to pronounce. And so he starts his presentation out. He says, hello, my name is Shubunakar Majahadeen. Gee, I sure hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. And I'm not trying to get him to become a stand-up comedian. I'm trying to give him a self-deprecating line that's going to get the audience to grin and nod like, oh, this guy doesn't take himself too seriously. Now, in terms of simplifying your speech, that's what the greatest communicators do, is they take complex concepts and they simplify them. If you look at some of the greatest scientists of our time, Albert Einstein, he used visualization when he was describing the speed of light. If you look at Richard Feynman, was in order to explain to Congress how the space shuttle blew up, he did a demonstration with a glass of water and a pencil. I mean, that's the teaching skill. I mean, this is why I find it hugely beneficial that I taught for so many years, all age levels, because it taught me there's a way to simplify these concepts. I learned long ago, what works with a 12th grader does not necessarily work with a kindergartner, but what works with a kindergartner works with all age levels. And so if you can make it fun and easy to understand, it's not denigrating your expertise. What it's doing is edifying your audience and showing them, hey, you can do this too. And what you're trying to do is to create as big a tent as possible. All of you can come along with me. That's really what you're trying to do in any presentation.
Correct. I agree. I think most people get so worried about the details and about how people are thinking about them that they forget to just make it easy. And, that's what I keep telling all my team members. I'm like, don't complicate it. Just leave it the way it is. Even if it doesn't work, we are going to go back and tell the client, yes, it's not working, give us X amount of time. And no complications at all. Great advice, Danny. Great advice. I have a very peculiar take on this though, and I would love what your thoughts are on this. There's this thing going around on the internet where they say, because of everything being instantly available to us and because of our scrolling habits, the attention span has drastically decreased. I know you've been talking for a very long time and for a lot of years. And like you said, you've met different kinds of people, different age groups. How does someone like you keep up with the changing world and keep up with the diminishing attention span?
That's a great question. Thank you for that, Sheekha. Well, this is where I'm very blessed to have taught kindergarten, because I call kindergarten New York, New York. If you can make it there, you can make it anywhere, because those kids have about a 7-minute attention span. And what they taught me was, how do I keep them engaged all the time? And so I kind of have a philosophy when I'm putting together presentations. People think and feel in different ways. So I want to make sure that you're laughing. We're probably going to sing at some point. We might dance. We're going to draw. You're going to interact, because people think in different ways. So I was actually working with a woman yesterday, and she's trying to figure out how to make her virtual talks more engaging. I say, well, right now, all you're doing is you're talking to the camera, which is only helping people that are learning. Actually, it was really kind of an auditory style, because she wasn't giving us visuals or anything. So I said, well, why don't you create a graphic? These 6 points that you're making, first of all, it's too many points. People can't remember that much. But second of all, you have to make it so people can follow along. This is why I think that children's books get a bum rap. Everybody remembers those children's stories for life. They teach really important morals. It's the more basic, the better. Yeah. And so, I find that people try and overcomplicate a lot of these things. There's simple things you can do to be engaging, by the way. I mean, one of the things that Coach Jimmy's really good about is teaching stagecraft. And so for example, if I'm on a virtual presentation like this, I'm going to start from left to right, because that's how Westerners read, is left to right. Now, if I was Eastern, I would start right to left. The left part of my stage, this is when I speak slower, because this is Act 1. This is when I had a lot of troubles and challenges that I had to try to overcome. And now I slightly turn and face you. And then I discovered the answer. Sheekha's podcast. It offered me everything that I ever wanted. And now I turn a little bit over to my right, and I'm speaking quicker and I'm smiling, because a whole bunch of great things happened once I enrolled Sheekha. Her podcast, it was better than a university degree. I learned every single time, and I came away inspired. And then I'll give you a ninja strategy. When you watch the best speakers and they come to their call to action, whether it's to subscribe to a podcast or to buy their product, which side of the screen do you think they're going to turn towards? They're going to turn this way, because subliminally your mind already realizes, oh, I remember all the good things happen over here, because that's what Sheekha was doing. Over here, slow, sad. It's interesting, the psychology that people are picking up most people don't realize it's happening all the time. And if you watch the best speaker, now you'll never be able to watch a speech again without watching the speaker, what they're doing, without you realizing what they're doing.
Exactly. Yeah. All right. Yeah. I'm going to remember that. So next time when I say, please subscribe, like, comment, and subscribe, I'm going to look this way.
Well, I'll give you, if I may, can I give you a strategy right there?
Absolutely. Yes. I need it.
Just alluded to because the biggest mistake, besides people bragging in their presentations, the biggest mistake I see most people making in presentations is they don't have one clear call to action. So I was on a podcast the other day, and the hostess at the end of the show, she said, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Make sure you like, subscribe, and give us a 5-star review. And after we got off air, I said, you just asked your audience to do 3 things. They're not going to do anything. Right? Again, you have to bear with me. I used to be a teacher. Choices confuse and cause you to lose. If you look at any grocery store chain, all these big grocery store chains, you go to buy mustard, and you go to the store and there's like 38 different types of mustard. Well, the number one grocery store chain based on sales volume in North America is Trader Joe's. And if you notice, the reason is when you go to Trader Joe's to buy mustard, there's one type of mustard. It's called mustard. Yeah. They've already made the choice for you. That's what you want to do for your audience. This is the path that you have to take. Lead them that way.
Okay, will do. I'll try it. I'll definitely let you know if that worked. So, okay, this is
Oh,
interesting.
I know
I'm
it works.
loving it.
Research before it. This is why you have to bear with me, Sheikha, because if you want an opinion, ask your Aunt Edna. If you want the research, I'm going to give you the research on why this is the way to do it, because we've done this with tens of thousands of people. I can tell you, you'll double your rate of return just by giving one clear call to action.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree because when I am consuming stuff on the internet and when I listen to these things, I don't do anything about it. I just scroll to the next one. Yeah, that's interesting. Wow, never thought of it that way. Okay, let's talk about the tone. If let's say if someone's brand new to public speaking and they want to be you someday, how does tone and pace make a difference, or do they actually make a difference?
They make a huge difference. It's just like using your stage, using your voice and your pace is very, very important. I mean, again, if I want to convey happiness, I want to convey optimism, I'm going to speak a lot quicker. If I'm delighted, I might even raise my voice a little bit. The pitch of my voice might even be good. But when I was young and my grandfather passed away, I'm slowing down. I'm making my voice deeper.
Yeah.
And what it's causing the audience to do is to concentrate. There's strength here. Another one of the mistakes I see people make all the time is they think they have to talk all the time. And I would argue, actually, there's a lot of power in those pauses.
Yes.
The first strategy I suggest when creating your podcast is this: do it.
Okay.
Now, let me tell you the second thing you need to do when you start your podcast. Now, what's happened, it sounds silly, but just by pausing for a couple of seconds, you're getting your audience a chance to actually process what you just said. Now, was it the most earth-shattering thing I just said? Well, to do it, it sounds simple, but usually those are the most powerful bits of wisdom. I mean, how many friends of yours, Sheekha, have talked about starting a podcast and they didn't do anything? I admire you.
Yeah.
That's why I came on your show, is because here's a person that's actually doing things. And the way you get better. So let's go back to those people you were talking about who have a difficult time explaining things. The way you get better is by facing that fear, being uncomfortable, and practicing. The reason I do podcasts all the time, it drives Coach Jimmy crazy. He's like, why do you do all these podcasts? I'm like, well, two reasons. First of all, it gives me reps. You've already asked me a couple of questions nobody has ever asked me before. So I'm like, oh, that's great. Now I have in my head how I'm going to answer that question. Sometimes I sound brilliant on an answer, and you didn't get to hear the 500 times I bombed on that answer, but I had 500 chances to practice. The second reason I do podcasts, Jimmy gets annoyed. He'll say, oh, only one person listens to that podcast. And here's what I have for your audience to listen to right now. It doesn't matter how many people are listening. All that matters is who is listening. If you only have an audience of one and it's Oprah Winfrey, that's a good audience. It's the truth. And I use Oprah as the example, but let's say you're in IT. Let's think of the person that means the most to you in IT. If that's the one person that listens to this, the podcast is called IT Made Fun.
Right.
Most people aren't going to listen to that podcast, but somebody that's in IT is like, oh, maybe this is something for me. I actually just had a real estate question recently, and it was kind of interesting. I noticed this. I didn't go to Google. I went to the podcast, to iTunes, to see if there was any podcast that addressed this issue on real estate. I was like, oh, that's interesting. That's the power of podcasting. Wow. I'm using it actually as a resource. And I thought, oh, because the person whose podcast I listened to, I actually hired them to solve this problem. I'm like, wow, that was a pretty good sales tool, was they had the podcast. I don't think that's why they created the podcast, but by answering my question, that built trust in me. And so I hired them to resolve my real estate issue.
Wow. Exceptional. Such a great example, Danny. Okay. I think you are creating new brain cell connections in me because I am looking at things from a different perspective. I used to love public speaking, and I would raise my hand every time I was in school for any debates, any elocutions, anything. And then growing up, that sort of took backseat. And then I found it again through the podcast. And now that I listen to myself, and then when other people give feedback, I'm like, okay, how can I improve? And now that you've given such amazing tips, I'm like, okay, I am going to remember this and actually implement it. And now it's stuck because I feel like the way you're delivering these messages, I think your unique style makes it that people remember it. The Apple example and all the other examples that you gave, they're just amazing. Thank you so much for all these suggestions, Danny.
Thank you. Well, that's the power. That's the power of stories. I mean, of all people, it's Joseph Stalin who said 1 million people dead is a statistic. One person dead is a tragedy. Translation, facts tell, but stories sell. Facts inform, stories transform. And it's those stories, and we've been doing this since we were cavemen and cave women, is we tell through stories. Again, what I love about you on this podcast, Sheekha, is I guarantee you the first time you did this podcast, it stunk. And the second time you did it, it stunk, but it didn't stink as bad as the first time. But now that you've been doing it for a while, now it's a finely tuned machine. You're feeling more and more confident and comfortable. Most of the people that Coach Jimmy and I work with, they're terrified of speaking on stage, or they don't see a reason to speak on stage. And we show them all kinds of techniques to get them much more comfortable. And because I believe that speaking is the fastest way to grow your business, whether it's on huge stages or just working in a boardroom trying to get your board to agree with your point of view. There's simple strategies when you're speaking that can definitely increase your success rate.
I agree. Agreed. With that, I'm going to ask you one last question, Danny. So imagine someone took all your notes and they did a great job with their talk, but now is the time for call to action. I already got my lesson, but it's the time for giving the audiences a call to action. And now they're shy, or they don't know how to ask people to go read their book or buy their product or use their service, or even reach out to them to give a feedback. What's an easy tip that they can follow?
Well, I don't give tips to anybody but waiters. I'll give your audience strategies. Strategy is something that Coach Jimmy and I call the natural bridge transition, natural bridge technique, because the human brain is very sophisticated. We know when somebody's teaching to us, and we also know when somebody's selling to us. And so after the content portion of your presentation, where in the content portion, we teach our clients ways to naturally, you're kind of a farmer, you're seeding ideas into the mind of the audience. So by the time you get to your call to action, they're not wondering, what are you going to sell me? They're begging you, oh, I was hoping you'd make an offer. And so the natural bridge technique is a simple phrase. One of the most common questions people ask me is, Danny, do you help people like me? And the answer is absolutely yes. And then we go into our offer. Now, the offer, this is why you end your presentation with a one clear call to action, but then also a powerful emotional close, because there's two types of people in your audience. I'm going to be stereotypical and call it the husband and the wife. I call the husband Joe Friday and the wife is Julia Roberts. So the husband is the guy sitting there with his arms crossed. He wants just the facts. How much is this going to cost? How long does it take? What do I got to do? And a clear call to action answers all of those questions to satisfy that Joe Friday. But if you only end your presentation with a call to action, you've ignored half of your audience, which is what I call the Julia Roberts. Julia Roberts, she doesn't care about the details. She just wants it to be fun and make her feel good. Oh my goodness, Sheekha, it's like my long lost sister. How do I work with Sheekha? She makes me feel good. And if you can create a clear call to action and a powerful emotional close that really gets that person to get up and take action, then you're going to have a powerful presentation. So for example, I was working with a woman, Kathy, who's a nutritionist, and she has a very thorough 90-day nutritional program that she talks about. But she ended her presentation just with her offer. And I said, you're ignoring the emotional part of people aren't logical people. People make their decisions based on emotions, not on logic. If we all used logic, all of us would drive like minivans. But some people want to drive a sports car and some people want to drive a monster truck because we have emotions and we want it red or whatever color. And so I asked her, okay, what do you want your audience to do? And she said, well, I want them to understand that they should hire me as a coach because they can't do this on their own. And so I said,
Right.
oh, so you need to hire an expert story. And she's like, what's a hire an expert story? And so I go into my database of stories. I give her an example. I'm like, after I've made my call to action, my enroll in my 90 days to greater nutrition that'll help you lose 10 pounds, for $497. I'll leave you with this. Many years ago, my wife and I had theater tickets, and we were dressed to the nines, driving to the theater when we got a flat tire. And my wife said, well, I'll call AAA and get the tow truck over here. I'm like, you don't have to call AAA. I'm a man. I can fix a flat tire. So I got out of the car, I opened up the trunk, and I got the spare tire, and then I got the pumper thing and the thing that's shaped like an X that you take the nuts out of the tire. 27 minutes later, I have grease all over me. I haven't fixed the flat tire at all. My wife is shaking her head like I could have done so much better than this guy. Well, unbeknownst to me, she had called AAA. This tow truck shows up, and a 17-year-old punk kid, he hops out of the truck and he changes my flat tire in 3 minutes flat. I think there's times in life when all of us think we can do it ourselves. But if you want to save time, you want to save money, and you want to save a whole lot of headache and embarrassment, you hire an expert. And so what I've done is I've ended my presentation with a metaphorical story that's leaving the impression in people's minds like, you know what? I've tried to do things before and I haven't been successful. I really need somebody to coach me through this. I'm going to hire Kathy to coach me on this nutritional program. That's the power of storytelling, is you're making a point without directly addressing the point.
Wow. I am floored right now. I am so impressed. I think it's the way you're saying it, Danny, because I've read all these tips. Everybody says, okay, start your presentation with a story, make it relatable. But I feel like the way you put everything in actionable, items, strategies, and takeaways, I think that is what connected with me. And I'm pretty sure it's connected with our viewers and listeners too. So thank you for these amazing strategies and suggestions. I'm going to stop using the word tips from now on. Again, thank you for that. But this was wonderful. Thank you for your time, Danny, and for being an amazing guest on our show.
Thank you, Sheekha. And as a thank you to you and your audience for bearing with me, I wanted to give everybody a free gift. So if you go to freestoryguide.com, guide like a tour guide, freestoryguide.com, I'm going to give everybody their own well-crafted story blueprint. What this is the actual process that Coach Jimmy and I take our clients through so that you can create your own well-crafted story. What this does for you is it takes the guesswork out of what to put and where to put it in your presentation. And what this means for you is the peace of mind that you have a presentation that's not just going to wow audiences, it's going to turn those audiences into future clients. You get that at Well-Crafted Story Guide. No. Well, freestoryguide.com. I started crossing my stories right there. Yeah, it's no, freestoryguide.com. If you go to freestoryguide.com, you'll get that. And I just want to thank you again, Sheekha, for all that you're doing. And thanks for modeling great speaking for all of us.
Awesome. No, thank you for just this amazing time. I learned so much. Thank you again. And you have a good rest of your day, Danny.
Take care. God bless.
Thank you so much for tuning in to Rise and Tell with Sheekha. I just need you to do one thing. Just click that share button, share it with your sister, your brother, your family members, friends, co-workers, or anybody who you think are going to learn a thing or two from this episode. Everybody needs good communication skills, and everybody wants to be a good public speaker. Thank you for tuning in. As always, keep growing, keep glowing, and be yourself. This is your host, Sheekha Singh, signing off. Bye.